Hello, St. John Baptist Church. Al McClaney here with a weekly stewardship video. And so this week, I'm going to be focusing on voting as my first slide is showing. So in Texas, where I'm located, early voting ends on October 30th. Hopefully, by the time you hear this and see this, you've already voted. Many parts of the country has already started early voting as well. And if all else fails, and I hope this is not your alternative, but if all else fails, you do need to still vote, which election day is Tuesday, November 30th. So even if you don't get to early voting, make your plan to go and vote Tuesday, November 30th at the latest. And as I said, this is going to be a different type of topic. We're going to talk about stewarding influence and legacy. Oftentimes, I'm talking about money, resources, finances, but there's also a stewardship of influence and legacy. First Corinthians 4:2 in the New Living Translation says, now a person who is put in charge as a manager must be faithful. So we're managing not only God's resources, but we're also managing the influence that he's provided us. And you can see here's a depiction of one person standing in the middle of others and symbolizes using the influence that you have. And it may not be hundreds or thousands of people, but the ones you do have influence over, your children, your family and friends, we have a edict from the Lord to make sure we're stewarding that properly and stewarding it in relation to his principles. And that will leave a legacy. So imagine the legacy of your friends or your children seeing that you vote, and you do that in every election, not just national elections. And when I was out voting last Saturday, I saw several parents bringing their children to watch them cast their ballot. And a person we all remember and know who stewarded his influence properly was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he was a pastor, and he saw that God had placed a purpose in his life in civil rights. And one of the areas of civil rights, he said, was in voting. And here's a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So long as I do not firmly and irrevocably possess the right to vote, I do not possess myself. I cannot make up my mind. It is made up for me. I cannot live as a democratic citizen observing the laws I have helped to enact. I can only submit to the edict of others. So influence is just as important to correctly steward under God's principles as money, finances, resources, our possessions. All of those are part of the stewardship. And so I want to go ahead. This is a shorter version because I'm going to end with a recording I want you to listen to. So I want to make time for that. But as always, the disclaimer is no advice should be seen as a recommendation, as I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this is for educational purposes only. So as we always do, we'll take a look at the stock market. This week's earnings, a lot of earnings that are out there that are going to influence the market and have it act in a certain way, most likely. Some I'll point out to you. Alphabet here, that's Google. So that's a huge earning being reported in the technology area. Caterpillar is going to tell us a lot about how the industrials are going, how manufacturing is going. Pfizer and Lilly, which you see here, are going to be influenced by pandemic efforts. Microsoft and AMD are huge in the technology area. UPS will tell us how transportation is going, because if transportation is up, all the manufacturing, all of commerce, when it comes to people buying and purchasing goods, will impact, of course, the transportation area. And UPS is going to be a good litmus test on that. Then we have Gilead and, the different pandemic efforts. Visa, Amazon is huge when we're going to look at e-commerce, Facebook, ExxonMobil. There's been a lot of talk about how much the oil industry is being impacted and hurt. And then there's Chevron. Then here's one you may have not heard of, but Generac. Generac has generators which could be influenced by the amount of hurricanes we've been having. And usually when the hurricanes are as prevalent as they've been this year, stocks that are in the area related to generators like Generac or Lowe's or Home Depot go up as a result. So there's going to be a lot of news and market movement based on the reporting that we had this week. So let's look real quick at the charts in the past behavior of the market, and we can see again we had some volatility, had a lot of selling that was occurring, some down days that were occurring in the S&P 500, little slight sell-off, and then some news which was related to the stimulus again, that we're hearing that there may be close to a plan being. So that's what the news equated to the ending of the week with some buying going on. The technology didn't fare as well as the larger market. A lot of selling, kind of flat through the week with just a slight increase of buying. So we know we're going to probably continue to see this all the way up until the election, and we've been talking before in previous videos about volatility and looking out for possible dangers ahead. So next week I'll probably be going more into that as I return to something more related to finances and possessions. So as I said, I wanted to put the spotlight in this video on the stewardship of influence and legacy, specifically in the area of voting. And that's me with my mask on and I voted sticker, which was last Saturday, October 17th, in which I voted. And as I remind you, for Texas, early voting ends October 30th. And for everywhere, the national election day is actually November 3rd, Tuesday, November 3rd. So what I want to end with is an audio that Ricky Smiley, who I grew up with, has been playing on his early morning show every day. And I appreciate Ricky for doing that. And it's a audio from Pastor Dr. Howard John Wesley. And he talks about what happens when we don't vote. And if you want to hear the whole part, and I think this is the whole part of it, you can go back in YouTube and just type in Pastor Dr. Howard John Wesley, what happens when you don't vote, or you can just type in when you don't vote, and you should pull it up. But so what I'm going to do is go ahead and play us out with this, and just remember, as always, no matter what happens in the election, we know that God is sovereign and he's in control.
This vote in November is not about the next 4 years. It's about the next 40 years. Let me take you back to Constitution and governance. The President of the United States has the authority to place men and women as judges all across the district courts, the appellate court, and the Supreme Court. This current president, in his 4 years, has appointed more judges than every other president except Jimmy Carter. In 4 years, President Donald Trump has appointed 198 judges to the bench, 2 to the Supreme Court, some 50 plus to appellate court, and the rest to district court. And many of those appointees will sit as justices of judgment for the rest of their lives. 198 judges have been appointed by this president. Do you know how many of those 198 appointees are black? Of the 198 judges that this president has placed on the bench, not one of them is black. Not a single black face sitting sitting as a judge under this president. 198 judges, and not one of them is black. So when you don't vote, you don't determine who stands at trial. When you don't vote, you don't get to sit in the jury and determine the fate of those in trial. When you don't vote, you don't get to help determine the judge that sits on the bench. So don't tell me you out here hollering Black Lives Matter if you don't vote. Black lives don't matter to you if you don't vote. Don't tell me you're mad that Daniel Cameron has not indicted the police officers who killed Breonna Taylor if you don't vote, because you ain't got nothing to do with it. How dare you not vote? When we don't vote, we dismiss ourselves from being part of leveling the playing field of justice in the United States of America.
I want to say this right here. That whole area in.
So I'm stop it there, and just remember how our votes count. And I just noticed on my audio, I didn't change my name. And in case someone's asking, what is this Think Pink Bleed Blue? Well, my wife and her college, and those of you who know her, Janine McClaney, Tennessee State University is having their virtual homecoming this weekend. So she's an AKA, so she's saying Think Pink and then Bleed Blue, which is the TSU Tigers. So have a great rest of the week, and hopefully you have voted. And if you haven't, get out and vote.